Today's conversation is inspired from years of application of a classic book from Florence Scovel Shinn titled Your Word is Your Want. Everything happens automatically by law. What appears as being done by the personal self is orchestrated by what one intentionally speaks feelingly upon within to pave each step that appears along the way to actualizing the desire. This is the benefit of consciously applying the power of your subconscious mind versus laboring in vain through identification of control-based beliefs from the past. By applying the power consciously, we allow everything to happen automatically rather than allowing the power to be experienced as unnecessary force through corresponding beliefs of control, which the force is still happening automatically, although we could say as automatic, undesirable experiences along the way to actualizing the desire. This is where your word is your wand comes in. We have associated intention to words and words strung together in sequence. Upon speaking feelingly within, the intention behind the words has an impression on your subconscious mind, and these intentions are brought forth into existence automatically via the power of your subconscious mind. In other words, you pave how life is experienced through your inner speech. As stated in Joshua 1:3, every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. Now, we placed emphasis in Sunday's video on inquiring within, the inquiry of self, which is allowing the senses to evidence. The question is it from the premise of desire being fact in imagination? So today we're discussing purifying the mind from unnecessary control-based beliefs through which you allow the physical senses to evidence for you the ideal experiences that lead up to the actualization of your desire, which you have already accepted as fact in imagination. As stated in John 7:24, do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. So unnecessary judgment towards the senses ceases by acknowledging the unconditional self, which is already fulfilled. And thus we can allow ourselves to experience this fulfillment also on the journey to actualizing our desires. In other words, valuing the journey and the destination and experiencing them ideally as one. This is true because desire and fulfillment are one. Desires are already fulfilled in imagination, and so is the way to actualize the desire. I don't believe one intentionally wavers on the way to actualizing their desires. The wavering is a result of identification to beliefs, which is apparent during unnecessary judgment towards appearances. The unconditional I is already fulfilled and thus beyond judgment. So as we inwardly speak ideally of fulfillment towards appearances as applicable on the path, which is righteous judgment, we do not waver. So we can also refer to this as walking by faith. For if one is walking by faith, they don't unnecessarily judge by appearances to perpetuate unnecessary beliefs in mind. Rather, those beliefs are allowed to be released, and they ideally act accordingly, as she says here. Hope looks forward. Faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly. And so everything happens automatically from the premise of an idea accepted as fact in imagination. The natural self moves ideally by law to actualize it, provided that the mind is kept free from bias of how it is brought forth into actualization. So this is where your word is your wand comes in. We are aware of our inner speech as the I, which is you, is beyond identification with mind. And by this it is meant knowing you have a mind and that you can rearrange it with the inner speech and more specifically, the intention behind the speech. So now being the observer of the mental activity, if the inner speech is not ideal in relation to appearances, We inwardly speak ideally in relation to the appearances to remain in our ideal state of consciousness. Again, as stated in John 7:24. Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. And for more on the unconditional I recommend Sunday's video. If you have not seen it, I'll link in the description to it. Now, when we speak within, I recommend doing so in a fascinating way, or we could say a magical way, to not provoke unnecessary rebuttals of the beliefs from the past resulting in resistance. This also releases identification to them. This is how we ideally inwardly speak with intention. Thus, by your word is your wand, it means your inner speech carries the intention that is brought into existence. Notice how Florence Scovel Shinn writes in a magical way. It allows for the reader to experience change without resistance. Hence, again, why the word is your wand. Carefully select the words that encourage being how you truly desire to be now. Matthew 6:6. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. So bring no resistance into your room, which is your mind, during prayer. You truly exist beyond resistance. One can only bring words or sequences of words that are personally associated with resistance into their room. Thus, choose the words that carry the ideal intention minus the resistance. There is no one in your room who judges you by the words you use. Be free to say it your way. The unseen is beyond judgment and operates through acceptance. And by that I mean what you accept as real now, facilitated by your carefully chosen words. For example, one may associate resistance to certain generic statements used to imply that they are already confident, resulting in unnecessary mental strain as they try to forcefully convince themselves when that is not needed. True prayer is about acceptance. There is no mental strain in acceptance. Knowing this, they may choose to say, "It is easy for me to acknowledge my confidence while interacting with others," or "Confidence is a natural expression of who I truly am," or whatever that easily implies acceptance. So now, upon accepting the idea as fulfilled, unless one subconsciously tries to control the process, which results in unnecessary suffering, all action and all roles play out automatically to actualize the prayer. Spirit animates all. Again, Matthew 6:6. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. So Spirit animates all. This is true as soul doership is an illusion. Everything happens by order, and by this I mean it appears you do or not do at times. Others do or don't do at times. And that is fine for the theater of appearances. Yet all that appears is truly animated by Spirit. It is the unnecessary beliefs that result in overthinking, from which one believes they need to figure out how it happens. The unseen, which is beyond the personal identity and beliefs that make it up, truly figures it out. So, the word is your wand, and the words and sentences represent the intention behind how the wand is waved. To realize you are already that which you desire to be or experience in imagination, from which it is automatically actualized for you, although it can appear through the acts of the personal self for life experiences, like, for example, artistic expressions. Yet it is Spirit that does everything. Thus, it is important to speak within, in a way where you easily accept your suggestions, while also releasing control-based beliefs, to allow Spirit to animate the body on the way to actualizing the inner realization. So, inwardly speak in a way that acknowledges you already are, in essence, those attributes which you desire to actualize. For to desire is to already have, and thus we wave the wand of our words in acceptance of all that we truly are, and it appears accordingly. Like, for example, loving relationships, as everything in the world of reflections appears as symbols of what is acknowledged as true within. And as we also discussed in Sunday's video, love is your true nature. And as love being your true nature, there's no real resistance to doing what you love to do. The only time resistance appears is if one does not accept their true nature, as Neville Goddard once said. Love is our birthright. Love is the fundamental necessity of our life. Do not go seeking for that which you are. Those who go seeking for love only make manifest their own lovelessness, and the loveless never find love. Only the loving find love, and they never have to seek for it. And so, how could it play out in appearances outside of relationships, which we discussed how it does in relationships in Sunday's video? Let's look at profession. So, I built 3 successful businesses. Prior to that, I had a successful 10-year IT career working in a company. Prior to that, I had various jobs in logistics, warehouses, etc., while I was in high school. Now, I actually loved each one of these times in my life. Otherwise, I would not have done them. To some, this would not be how they experience a lot of their inherent love, through their professional service. I loved the various jobs in warehouses, and also my career working in a company prior to being a 14-year full-time entrepreneur. I truly love logistics and warehouse management systems, and although I worked on the floor while I was in high school, I was actually fascinated by how it all worked. And I got to experience what it was like to work in the various roles in the warehouse. So my time there wasn't boring. It was interesting, as I was genuinely interested in how it all works. Then when I went to work for a company, which was a larger retailer, who had a number of distribution centers, I actually got promoted as the tech for the warehouse management systems, data center, IT services related to it. And I got to implement the very systems I used while I was working in those warehouses during high school. In 2009, when I started my IT business, which I ran until 2013, I had a number of clients where we implemented systems to support their logistics. It was actually fun for me. I genuinely enjoyed what I did and do, otherwise I don't do it. I used to speak to myself in a loving way during my time in these areas, and it did not feel like I was really working. I enjoyed it all. The only time I did not experience love in these areas was during times where it was apparent that I was not speaking lovingly of myself in relation to the experiences within these areas, and it appeared that way in those moments. Those were opportunities to release identification to beliefs, which upon releasing identification to them through ideal inner speech, the experiences changed and I continued to appear progressing in career and business. I also have a friend who works in finance. She is probably watching this video right now. She progresses rapidly in her career, rapid promotion after promotion, by only changing how she inwardly speaks about day-to-day experiences. This is again because everything happens automatically, and it is up to you to determine how it all appears through your inner speech. So if you speak lovingly to yourself, you'll automatically end up doing what you love to do. And as you continue to speak lovingly to yourself, not all the time, only as applicable, you'll find that you'll also experience it automatically in all that you do. Now, this brings me to the next aspect of our discussion. I had a conversation with a friend the other day while I was on vacation. We discussed for hours the topic of doership and non-doership. So non-doership is the idea that we're not the sole doer of our actions. Doership is the idea that we are the sole doer of our actions. As you acknowledge, consciousness is the true reality, and upon deeper inquiry, we acknowledge that all is one consciousness from which it is outpictured as the appearances of life. The belief of doership or sole doership is naturally brought up for questioning. So experiences of not being the sole doer is easily acknowledged when you commit to what you love. For example, you may notice, like I do, hunches, inspirations, visions flash upon your mind's eye automatically while you are doing what you love to do. Everything you appear to do or don't do feels like it's happening ideally and automatically. You can be engaged in what you do for hours, like art or creative expression, and upon reflection, you witness something wonderful expressed into form automatically. As you continue to do what you love to do and relate lovingly with what you do through your inner speech, you'll experience what I'm referring to as everything happening ideally automatically. Florence Scovel Shinn said, "In the divine design, there is no limitation, only health, wealth, love, and perfect self-expression." See the last part? Perfect self-expression. So perfect self-expression is our natural way of being. By remaining aware of what we are speaking inwardly in relation to whatever we are doing, we know how we are directing the power. Speaking lovingly about yourself is acknowledging your true way of being, and you'll experience it thus as the appearances in all areas of your life. So this is what it's all about. Speaking inwardly in a way that acknowledges you already have what you desire, in a way where you easily accept the suggestion from which the unseen does everything ideally for you. So do not dwell on inner speech that you would not consider to be ideal, which could include thoughts of failure, disappointment, or condemnation, not being good enough, unloved, incomplete, etc. Then they no longer are associated with the experience from which perfect self-expression is allowed to happen automatically. Acknowledge, it is not the thoughts that show up in mind from past beliefs, but the dwelling in them or the entertaining of them in a not so ideal way that perpetuates the corresponding beliefs. If a thought that is not ideal shows up in mind, think of something else instead. For example, Philippians 4:8. "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things." So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's go ahead and conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You could say, "I accept the word as my wand. I accept my mind as a pure blank canvas, and I apply these two gifts consciously to bring forth the life I truly desire by accepting in imagination that I am already all that I desire to be now, from which everything appears automatically to reflect my bliss." If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.